Ah, there you are. Come on in. I've heard all the stories you tell about me, the boogeyman, the ultimate tempter, the villain in your neat little moral plays. Honestly, it's all so predictable. So I thought, why not set the record straight? Hear it from the source. This is my memoir, a little chronicle of my long and storied career.
You see, that's the problem. You humans have painted me with such a clumsy, broad brush. You think of horns, a pitchfork, a simple creature of fire and brimstone. But temptation, my dears, that's an art form. And as the times change, the art has to evolve. So naturally, so did I. So here's what we'll be covering. First, we'll go over let's call them my crude beginnings. Then we'll move into my refinement, the art of the mind. Of course, we have to talk about that tedious little problem I call the annoying moral compass. And we'll finish up with a rather embarrassing professional failure on my part. Let's get started. Right. Every artist has an early period, the one they're not too proud of. Mine was loud, it was monstrous, and frankly, a bit artless. This was back in the days of that Faustbusch legend. My job was so much simpler then, so much more direct. Here's a way to think about it. Back in 1587, temptation was a sledgehammer. It was all about raw, unfiltered desire. But by the time that fellow Goethe got his hands on the story, the game had totally changed. It became a subtle psychological affair, a wager. And you have to admit, that's a far more interesting challenge. And this perfectly describes my old operating system, the id. It's that screaming infant deep in your soul. It has no patience, no sense of morality, it just wants. It runs on a very simple, very elegant piece of code. The pleasure principle. You know the one. If it feels good, do it. Right now. My relationship with that first Faust was purely transactional. He'd demand things, the finest food, bottomless wine. He even wanted Helen of Troy for a night. And me, I was basically his supernatural delivery service for instant gratification. There was no debate, no real philosophy, just pure, unadulterated fulfillment of his most basic urges. And back then, I absolutely looked the part. A monster for monstrous appetites. My appearance was a direct reflection of the crude, visceral work I was doing. What was the point of subtlety? But as you humans got more complex, so did your desires. Simple gratification it got boring. So I needed an upgrade. I had to evolve from a creature of impulse into a being of intellect. This, my friends, was my refinement. My turn as the ego. So my whole operating system had to shift. See, the ego doesn't get rid of desire, it just gets clever about it. It works on what you'd call the reality principle. It's that little voice that says, all right, you want that? But screaming and shouting won't get it. Let's make a plan. Let's navigate the tedious rules of the world. It's pragmatic, it's cynical, and it's so much more effective. Goethe, I have to give him credit, he gave me my best line. The very essence of my new identity. I am the spirit that negates. My job wasn't to burn everything down anymore. No, it was to whisper in your ear that your grand ambitions are pointless, your striving is foolish, and that real satisfaction, it comes from accepting the cynical, material truth of the world. And of course, my wardrobe had to change with my methods. The monstrous form retired. In its place stood a rather well-dressed gentleman, witty, charming, and utterly calculating. I mean, when you're manipulating the mind, you can't show up dressed like a beast, can you? You have to look like a reasonable, if slightly jaded friend. My role with Goethe's Faust was completely different. I became his shadow ego. I saw a man just bored to tears by books and abstract ideas. My job was to be his guide to reality, to convince him that to truly live, he had to get his hands dirty. I was his pragmatic partner in a huge experiment to find one single moment of perfect, absolute satisfaction. But of course, in every single version of this story, there is always one nagging little complication, that irritating voice in the back of all your heads, that moral compass you all seem to be saddled with, the superego. And there it is, your internal prison warden, the superego. It's the part of you that soaked up all of the rules from your parents, your church, your society. It's always pushing you to be better, to strive for some ridiculous ideal of perfection. And its main weapon, guilt. Oh, it's an absolute nuisance to my work. So my strategy had to adapt. In the old days, the superego was an outside enemy. God, the church, a clear set of rules to break. My strategy was just direct opposition. Simple. But with Goetz's Faust, that voice was inside him. It was his own conscience. So I couldn't fight it head on. I had to mock it, belittle it, and most importantly, distract him from it.
My whole project was basically to drown out that internal striving. I offered him the small world, simple, sensual pleasures. When that wasn't quite enough, I offered him the great world, power, influence, massive projects. Anything, really, to keep him busy, to keep him from listening to that part of himself that was searching for something higher. Which brings us to the rather bitter end, the conclusion of our wager. And despite all my sophistication, my intellect, my impeccable style, I lost. And it is absolutely infuriating. Let's not mince words here. The wager was simple. Find a moment so beautiful that Faust would wish it to stay forever. If I did that, his soul was mine. In the end, his soul was whisked away from under my nose. A cosmic technicality, if you ask me, but a loss is a loss. So, why did my brilliance, ego-driven strategy fail? Because that damned striving, that noble, absolutely ridiculous superego trait, it turned out to be stronger than all my cynicism. I offered him everything the world could possibly give, but he found his ultimate moment not in getting something, but in working toward a future he would never even see. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. This human need for meaning over mere satisfaction. It is, I must admit, your most baffling and irritating quality. And so I'll leave you with a little something to think about. Look at your own lives, your ambitions, your careers, that relentless desire you have to improve, to achieve, to strive. Are you truly reaching for something noble? Or are you just a more sophisticated id, dressing up its raw, childish desires in the fancy clothes of the ego? Think about it. I'll be watching.